I was asked in a women's forum, what causes imposter syndrome and how do you overcome it? And without hesitation, without thinking a lot, instinctively, I gave her an answer. And now I realize that it's backed by neuroscience. Today, we're going to deep dive into where imposter syndrome really comes from and why it is so prevalent in successful women, especially women of color, and how you can finally overcome it. Let's talk about it.
Life happens while we're making plans. No dress rehearsals. We get no second chance.
Hi, I'm Kim. Welcome and welcome to my channel, the home of the Fly Girl, fearlessly living you. This is the space for women who don't do limits, especially age limits. This is where we reclaim our dreams, live boldly, and step into everything that we were created to be. Have you ever walked into a room or sat in a meeting and thought, I don't really belong here? They're going to figure me out sooner or later. You ever felt like that? That, my friend, can be imposter syndrome. And it happens to the best of us. Imposter syndrome is when you second guess yourself even when you're qualified. It's that nagging feeling that your success is just luck or chance, and that at any moment, someone will find out and the truth about you will be revealed. Studies show that over 70% of people have feelings of being a fraud at some point in their career. And one of the biggest reasons people struggle is comparison, which was my instinctive answer to that young lady who asked the question in the forum. We look at others, how polished they seem, or how confident they appear, what they've accomplished, and suddenly we feel like we don't measure up. But here is the problem: comparison is a trap. You and I were never meant to be carbon copies of anyone else. You have your own strengths, your own weaknesses, your own style, your own voice. Now, don't get me wrong, being inspired by others is powerful. And I actually encourage my clients to model behaviors that they admire. See someone communicate with confidence, borrow that posture. See someone lead with clarity, learn from it. See someone who is able to really accomplish their goals, find out how. But comparing yourself to someone else is a disservice. And why? Because you're measuring your behind the scenes against their highlighted reel. The reality is, everyone has gifts, talents, abilities, and everyone has weaknesses as well. And the person that you are comparing yourself to, they're probably struggling with insecurities you will never see. But true imposter syndrome is feeling like a fraud despite all of your success, attributing your wins to luck or timing or someone else's mistake, or fearing that you'll be found out. Not a mental disorder, but a deeply ingrained pattern of thought. Everyone feels inadequate sometimes. You bomb a presentation or you're learning something new and you think, oh God, am I really cut out for this? That's normal, but imposter syndrome is different. It's not a fleeting moment, it's a recurring mindset. So even with evidence like degrees, promotions, awards, you still can't internalize success. That's when self doubt turns into a pattern. So you may or may not actually have imposter syndrome. Psychologists trace imposter syndrome back to childhood, conditioning sometimes, comparison. Maybe you were compared to your siblings or classmates and always measured against someone else. You may have experienced conditional praise. Maybe you only received recognition when you excelled. So you learned that love and belonging depended on achievement. You may have attained labels. Maybe you carried a label like the smart one or the gifted one. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Many of us were praised for being smart, but the emphasis wasn't on the effort that we put forth or our persistence. And that's what psychologists call a fixed mindset. When you're constantly told you're so smart. And so then you internalize this as your identity. But what happens when you walk into a room that's full of other high achieving, smart people? Suddenly that identity feels threatened. If being the smart one is who I am, what does it mean if I struggle or if someone seems smarter? That's where the seeds of imposter syndrome can sprout. Because instead of seeing challenges as opportunities to grow, a fixed mindset, of course, is whispering, maybe I don't belong here. Maybe I was never that capable to begin with. The truth is, effort, resilience, and the ability to learn are far better predictors of long term success than some static intelligence. But if we weren't taught that as children, those old scripts can follow us right into adulthood. Now, let's talk about something now, women of color often experience imposter syndrome at higher rates. Why? Because beyond the personal factors, there are systemic pressures. Walking into rooms where you're the only one, carrying stereotypes and microaggressions that whisper, you don't belong, which makes the need to reframe and reclaim our voice even more urgent. Imposter syndrome is heavier when the system whispers you don't belong. Here's the irony though, imposter syndrome usually strikes successful people. If you weren't achieving anything, you wouldn't feel like a fraud. The mismatch happens because the evidence says you belong, but your inner voice says, not really. And that gap, that disconnect is the core of imposter syndrome. Self doubt often equals proof of success. And neuroscience explains why. Your amygdala, it's the brain's fear center, lights up when you feel judged, making you anxious. And then that prefrontal cortex is constantly analyzing and replaying doubt loops in your mind. And your dopamine system doesn't always record success. So instead of anchoring it as confidence, your brain shrugs it off. So if you've ever wondered, why can't I believe in myself? Even with proof, that's your brain's wiring. But the beauty of the brain is it can be rewired. Shift your focus inward. Stop looking at who you're not and focus on your strengths, your contributions, your uniqueness. Build a victory file, and I mean physically. Write a victory file, collect positive feedback, and then revisit them when doubt creeps in. Instead of I don't belong, say I'm learning and contributing, and that has value. And here's another thing you can do, visualization. Picture yourself succeeding. The brain rehearses it like reality. Mindfulness is important. 1 minute of deep breathing before a big moment calms your amygdala. Remember, growth mindset, not perfectionism. Perfectionism is not the goal. The goal is to be able to grow, to expand, to achieve, to become. So learn to become calm and reframe, visualize, record, and grow. Imposter syndrome loses its grip when you stop scanning for evidence that you don't belong and start gathering proof that you do. And this is how our brains work. Our brains will always look for the evidence that we choose to see. So if you decide you want to see that you do belong, once you begin to focus on that, your brain will start to show you all these different areas and places and situations where you do belong. but you have to be intentional. You don't need to be anybody else. You need to be you. Your gifts, your contributions, your presence, they are more than enough. You struggle with imposter syndrome, or even those bouts where you just feel a little inadequate. You're comparing yourself. It happens to the best of us. Remember, you can reframe and have your brain start to look for the evidence that you need that will give you the confidence that you desire and the confidence that you deserve because you belong. If this resonated for you, please like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and share it with another woman who may need this reminder because, it's very hard to be fly when you are struggling with questions as to whether you belong. You belong. You are not an imposter. You are not a fraud. Stay confident and, of course,
It's up to
stay
me.
fly.
Do what I love, be all I can be. Today starts our future, we get but one shot. Live your